today. We're going to have an amazing masterclass. We've got a super expert with us in terms of Dr. Andre Soni. As I've done a podcast with him about a couple of months back, and he was kind enough to do this for us. So, a quick background about Dr. Andre Soni. He's a renowned expert in the field of generative AI, and he has over 10 years of experience in AI business applications. So, he's a physicist and a PhD from the Imperial College and the chief AI officer at AI Technologies. He's also an avid writer. So I think one of his books, and correct me if I have got this right, Machine
Sure.
Learning for the Web, right? And I
Yes.
think that got so that's sold over 10,000 copies in different languages, including Chinese and Korean, right? So
Yes.
that's pretty awesome. And he's also an international speaker. He's spoken across London, New York, Dubai, Frankfurt, Saudi Arabia, and a few other countries. So without further ado, I hand it over to you, Dr. Andre Soni. And also, folks, stay on till the end because he has something exciting lined up for you all in terms of, okay, I'll leave it to him, which he will announce as we go ahead. So over to you, Andre.
Thank you all. And just as I go through, if there is anything you don't understand or you have any question, please feel free to write it. I will reply at the end. Also, it's interesting for me, if you don't mind, just write the industry you're from. As much as I can, I will try to tailor. If there are some industry that you are coming from, I will try to. Obviously, AI is applicable to basically any industry, but if you're having industry specific, I will try to tailor to your industry, depending on the majority of your comments. Okay. So thank you, Akash, for the introduction. So all I'm gonna do in the next 30 minutes or so is giving you an overview of how you can build the AI solution that actually have a return of investment for your company, and nevertheless they're obviously compliant to any work or regulation, and you actually can trust yourself. It's not just because you need to respect the regulation. Bear in mind, this is a very short version of larger learning module that I usually do for companies, usually tailor-made, etc. But we can talk about the end. So I need to be concise. We have 30 minutes to give you some value today. Okay, so what I'm gonna say here is, first of all, when you implement AI, you need to be sure is aligning with the business objective. I'm gonna touch that you have a return of investment. Basically, the money you spend in AI is worth the time and money. It's reliable and trustworthy. What I mean by that, as you know, AI tend to do mistakes, technically hallucinations, and you need a way to know that is always returning you the right answer, and or when it's not returning the right answer, you have a procedure or a system that you can go around it when basically it goes wrong. The last bit is about regulation. Yes, it's related to trustworthiness, but it's a bit more related to whatever in the world, whenever in the world you are, there are going to be regulation directly or indirectly that affect the implementation on AI. I give, of course, a short description of that and what you can do about that. It needs to be practical for you. Okay, cool. So first of all, when you need the first thing you need to do when you're considering to have an implementation on AI is obviously the profitability. What it means, as you know, it means that you need to understand if these AI solutions, first of all, is right for me, it's gonna return more than any money I spend. Okay, so when you assess profitability, there are two factors. One is the money or the time efficient you're gonna get, and the other aspect is what the cost will be. Easy, right? And usually when you evaluate these things, there are few criteria. Again, I cannot go in the details of these criteria, but some of them I'm sure it's very straightforward for you, some probably less, and I'm going to explain you what I mean. First is human repetition and effort. When there is certain procedure, for example, legal document, I can be even assessing specific insurance policy. It can be assessing automatically certain cybersecurity attack, agriculture detection, or whatever it is. there is a human effort, and you need to understand how repetitive it is and how skilled the person needs to be to do the job. Okay. uh, Obviously the more is the task, not the job, the task. AI, if you need to remember anything from today, AI automate tasks, not job. AI automate tasks, not job. Okay. Apart from that, so how repetitive is the effort and what's the frequency? Okay. And another aspect, related and unrelated, is understanding what's the cost of human error. I give an example. Let's say you are in a very regulated industry. I'm not sure what your industry is, but let's say you are from healthcare. Yeah. If you do a mistake, or education, if you do a mistake, or the wrong treatment, or the wrong grade to the student, things like that, there will be a high future impact to the person. Okay. So that is usually reflected to the cost of an insurance or things like that. Now, if you can have a system with AI that can reduce the likelihood, the probability of doing the mistake, automatically you're reducing your cost of your insurance. So this is an indirect way to measure that. Yeah. So if you reduce the exposure to a risk, which is very high risk, so it's covered by a lump sum insurance, you can reduce basically the premium of the insurance to have a system that can do that. And the other aspect is I don't think many talk about that, but this is actually one of the main key of automating tasks, is whenever you have a non-economically viable, if not done by AI, if not basically if they're done automatically. I give you a few examples. I've been directly involved in different projects. For example, in cybersecurity, depending on the situation, obviously cybersecurity is a broad industry per se. You have a lot of situation which you have a lot of attack, and you have an analyst that needs to investigate every single alarm to understand if it's a true attack, is a false attack, what to do with that attack, etc. Now, chances are, in fact, happen for any large company or institution, you have way more attack than your security analyst. No matter how much money and budget you have to hire security analysts, you always have more attacks. So it's not economically viable to have a team of security analysts larger than a certain quantity. Okay, you cannot economically do it. For that reason, having AI application that automatically screen for certain specific attack, etc., it will become economically viable for the company to do certain checks and relieve from certain for certain task, again, the cybersecurity analyst. Basically, it means whenever a team is overwhelmed by work, AI works very well. Other example is, for example, in the financial industries. You may know or not that for a lender or for any investment really, but let's say lending, to lend £1 million or 20 million pounds or dollars, whatever, or to lend 100k or 50k, whatever the currency is actually the same work. It's the same compliance and the same effort for the lender or for the investor, banker, or whoever it is. Yeah, it's the same work. What it means, as you can see in the market, definitely there is less money or more cost to lend a small amount than a larger amount. And the reason is because the work per se is the same. It's not the quantity of money. The work they have to do on the compliance to check the person or the company, whatever, is exactly the same. So it's not economically viable to lend or invest for small amount. Yeah. If you implement AI or solution like that, it becomes economically viable to lend or to do small amount. And that's go on for many different industry, agriculture or small fields, whatever. Yeah, that's what I want to say. I don't think many talk about that. Okay. Now, once you understand that, roughly speaking, the profitability, you need to understand, is your company or organization ready for it? There are 3-4 criteria to understand how easy how ready is your company. One is the process complexity. what you're trying to automate with AI is very complex. Means there are a lot of, so a process is divided by different steps, yeah, and these steps per se are very complex. It means it's not exactly a yes or no. It's very difficult to get in a if statement yes or no answer. That's complexity, yeah. The more complex it is, the more it will cost, basically. Okay, is the infrastructure, for example, obviously the data. Is the data already in a good database? Is in a good stream flow or not? That will add cost. Legal compliance exposure. The moment you're going to use data to implement your application, you probably need to have more governance and compliance exposure, and that will be a cost. The fourth, which is a cost, but I wouldn't say this is a large cost for you. It depends on this. Apart from the implementation cost, I mean long-term cost, is training the workforce to use the AI. When I mean training, I'm not saying just prompting or things like that. I'm saying about understanding the implication, the governance as a point three when you use certain data, or when you're actually using the output of certain AI solution. Okay. The next is actually the implementation. So you assess more or less the profitability. You understand what the situation is on the infrastructure side. Now is the moment to implement. You either have a team in-house or you have a team outsourced. Obviously, there are different criteria to choose an in-house team versus outsourced. When do you choose one or the other? When is more convenient? I do not have time for doing that. It's a bit long, but I can give at least the initial idea when you discuss with team, either internal or external. As I say, this masterclass is for executive. For executive, they not necessarily need to know all the code. In fact, they shouldn't. Not necessarily need to do even the prompt themselves, but they need to know how to talk to technical teams, what to ask the technical teams. Okay. If you do that, the first thing you need to remember is aligning the POC, the proof of concept or minimum valuable problem you have with the final live solution. Okay, you need to understand what the final. I'll give you a quick example so you understand. So let's say you're implementing a fraud detection system and you have a minimum viable product. Okay, this minimum viable product is being tested in, I don't know, 100 megabytes, a gigabyte of data. I don't know. I'm just inventing at the moment. Okay, now when you're gonna scale it in a large infrastructure with multiple fraud per second, etc. Okay, what's the latency? What's the response time? Of course, when you do the POC, it can be even 10 milliseconds response time. When you're scaling a large infrastructure with terabyte of data streaming on it, what's the response time? You can understand if the response time is like 10 minutes, it may be not economically viable anymore, because you need, I don't know, the business case can be that you need a fraud detection at least under a minute. If when you scale it, it's not the same metric as you have the POC, it can invalidate the return of investment. Again, a fraud detection under a minute, it may be not viable. So even if the POC work, doesn't mean that when you scale it, it's gonna work. Okay. So alignment of the POC with a live solution. There are many ways to do it. There are many ways to check it with the terminal team. I don't have time to say now, but at least bear that in mind. The other aspect is data should be ready. What I mean by that, yes, I'm sure you already assessed the readiness of your data and the infrastructure, but sometimes you need new implementation. It's very common. Organization have data scattered all around, yeah, in different departments. HR has its own data for or your own employee. The sales data is in another system. They may not communicate to each other, but it happens that your AI solution needs to have a workflow that is both, and these are separate. So you need a new integration, data integration, and pipeline solution that should be added to the task. Next is the maintenance. Okay, you implement the solution, but over the years, I don't know, it took you 6 months, 1 year to implement the solution. For the next 5 or 10 years, how long will it cost you to maintain the solution or upgrade the solution per year? You have an idea? I give you a rule of thumb later, but I don't have the time to discuss how exactly you calculate that. Of course, get in mind cybersecurity cost. The more you implement the solution, the more you need to probably add into the budget cybersecurity cost, because basically you are implementing solution that can be hacked. And again, I don't have time too much, but if you're an executive, you need to understand if it's worth for you to implement a solution. The quality of the implementation or the service you get, doesn't matter if it's an internal or external team, depends on the quality of your question, okay? It's always like that. It will always be like that. I don't have time to give a full review of which question you always need to ask, but if you remember two, I can give you two. First, again, the POs ask for the final metrics when the solution is live, not at the POC stage, okay? What I mean by that, implement at the POC, ask them when you're going to have live, you have way more data, way more streaming, etc. What are going to be the response time, for example, or whatever other metrics? Yeah, the response metric or any metrics should be expected at live, not when you have POC. Have a discussion on that. And the other is a bit complex, but essentially talk a lot about models, actually AI solution, not the architecture. If there are people, technical team that talk a lot about architecture and not too much about the solution itself, the model, is usually a red flag. I don't have time to discuss why, how, etc. But just remember that if they talk a lot about architecture and not actual model, is usually a red flag. Okay. Next, again. So now I discussed about return of investment and profitability, roughly speaking. Again, I don't have time to explain all of this, but hopefully you understand a little bit how you should manage it. And I conclude that with a bit of rule of thumbs on that. So first, ask always the final metrics on the live metrics you should expect, okay? Not at POC stage, okay? At POC stage, you should have an expectation of the final metric of the solution, response time, accuracy, etc. when it's live, not at POC level. Okay, so second, data storage processing. It happens that when you go live, you should expect that actually the data storage should increase because it's going to consume more data. You need to save data for machine learning operation and comparing the model or whatever else. So usually, as a rule of thumb, again, I don't have time now to give the detail, but a rule of thumb is easy. Well, I can give you at least a rule of thumb is add at least 20-30% margin on your initial infrastructure margin to cover up for more data when the solution is actually live for the next 5 to 10 years or so. When solution are live, you need to remember that, again, the data is usually scattered in your organization. It's not concentrated in one box. So you need to add some cost to integrate the data solution, okay? And according to that, the more you implement pipeline of data, you are increasing your cybersecurity exposure, which needs to be protected somehow. So if you want a rule of thumb of yearly maintenance cost, I think it should be 10% of what you pay for your initial 10-15% of your initial implementation. On top of that, I comment to that in the next slides, is you probably gonna have governance, yeah? Governance based on the new AI regulations and things like that. And usually that cost is about 4 to 8% of the initial implementation budget. Obviously, this is a rule of thumb. Again, I don't have time to give you the exact overview with example, things like that. But hopefully you have at least an idea about that. Okay, trustworthy, reliable AI. There we go. So in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about how you make sure your solution is compliant, okay, and regulation. But more than that, you yourself and your team and organization needs to trust it. It's not just respecting the regulation. It's about you as an organization, as a group of people, actually you yourself trusting AI. How to do that? Well, you need to do a paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift is as follows. We are used to, in a way, assess AI inside metrics, accuracy, false positive, as before, time of response. So you just checking the AI per se inside, which, by the way, if you are gonna use outside API or solution like OpenAI, Copilot, whatever else, you cannot even do that. but you can do something around that when you fine tune some model, but it's a bit complex. So the paradigm shift is to, instead of relying your trust and your reliability on inside metrics, you do the paradigm and you do a wall outside, and you basically you rely on the process around the AI, not the metric inside the AI. When the AI does something, regardless is wrong or not, it usually has a wall or checks before getting to the final users. So basically, you are relying on the AI, not too much, but you rely on the process around the AI. So your trust is not how much the AI is gonna go there, but because the output of the AI is not directly go to the user, it goes directly to your processes, and your processes make sure that the user doesn't get something bad or something like that. Oh, again, I don't have this, time to give you example of things like that, but at least you should get the idea. The shift is, don't trust the AI itself or try to measure. You should measure anyway, but the trust doesn't come to trusting directly the AI. It's trusting around the AI. Okay. So basically, when you go in this, when you're driving in the street, you do not trust necessarily the other driver, but you trust the rules that regulate, the streets, the driving behavior. You don't necessarily trust the other driver. You trust the rules around. Okay, this is kind of the concept. And obviously, there are ways to implement that, but again, I don't have time for that. Now, once you you put processes around the AI. Now you're ready to well, and you have to, because there are new regulation coming. Obviously, the one that is coming literally in these days is the EU AI Act for the European zone. Yeah. And very briefly on that, there are two approaches of regulation. Yeah. One is called the horizontal approach, which is the EU AI Act, which means essentially there is one body of law, one body of regulation that regulates AI. Yeah. The other is what is called the vertical approach, which it can be, by the way, is also Israel that using this, but UK, US as federal state. Yeah. California, for example, is more towards EU regulations. But anyway, at federal level, you can have a vertical approach, which means any industry as a regulator, like let's say healthcare. Healthcare is already regulated. Healthcare, of course. Financial service already regulated. There is an authority usually in any country that regulate that. They need to operate in the industry. They need to be regulated. Okay. And the vertical approach said, no, we don't have an AI regulation, but if the authority of healthcare or financial service want to add on top specific rule or the rule they have already, they can. That's the vertical approach. Every industry regulate AI if necessary when they can see through. Okay, that's the kind of rule. Nevertheless, the principles are the same. I believe the principle will be the same. The vertical, horizontal are gonna be the same all around the world. Okay. Basically, it will be unacceptable to do anything that is against human life. There will be obviously certain distinction, etc. This is taken from the area. They basically no weapons, no things that can, insult people. Emotion recognition, that's the reason really. Emotion recognition is to avoid the people got insulted because they have certain emotion or get exploited in a bad way. This is kind of applicable everywhere. There are regulations. That's why the vertical approach is still the same. You see, so unacceptable, basically it should be unacceptable in any country regarding the regulation, is things that you cannot do against human beings. Okay, highly regulated. Again, financial services or healthcare or other industries, they are anywhere highly regulated. And therefore, AI implemented there, regardless if AI Act or the US approach, is needs to have certain specific governance rules if you're gonna use AI. Okay, if there is limited risk, then for example, limited risk is customer service. You have a broken washing machine. in your house or things like that. You call the customer service and you have a chatbot interacting with you. If it goes wrong, it doesn't harm you. Nothing goes bad with you, and therefore it's limited risk, and therefore using AI in this situation is you need to basically regulate your data exposure. It's called GDPR in many regulations. Basically, you need to be sure your sensitivity of the data, the personal information of the data is treated correctly in anonymization, things like that, but nothing to relate to the AI, okay? Basically, you need to behave well, regardless vertical approach, horizontal approach, UI act. As long as you behave well with other, your client or customer, it shouldn't be okay. Okay. Now, I don't have too much time. We are already 12:30, but anyway, I go quickly on that. Basically, that means that the impact on the world is the bottom line. Again, I don't have time to go in the detail of that, how to implement that in your own jurisdiction. But basically, it means that there are ways in which you can draft your governance policy to be aligned to any regulation around the world, regardless if you're in EU or UK. That means that whatever you decide to do, the governance you're gonna get is the governance that is applicable to UAI Act, UK regulation or US regulation regardless. It's possible to do that. In fact, I'm gonna discuss briefly how you can do that, at least an overview on that, okay? Now, the impact in the AI team is obviously the more your AI solution impact lives. Yeah, again, healthcare is way more impact is customer service for washing machine. They should have basically some training how to use the AI and probably some insurance. Put in the way, the insurance you have in your business should have a line also, or more than a line actually, that cover both cybersecurity and AI exposure. Okay. That said, very quickly, when you're gonna implement AI governance, you should follow. This is a quick slide to say that you should follow. If you have already GDPR or data governance for the sensitivity of the data for your user, things like that, there are already roles in that governance. Data protection officer become AI protection officer, and so forth for all the other role within the governance structure in your organization. Okay. Now, so there are two aspects of that when you do governance. One is the regulations, yeah, and the other aspect is how you do that in software. Okay. Around again, if you see this, if you remember this. Again, I'm talking about what can you do in a software way around your AI solution, okay? Very briefly on that, what you can do is simply define a set of rule and test around the AI solution before go to the user or the customer, okay? For example, I give quick example here, prompt predefined with UM output, red teaming. This is a concept taken from cybersecurity, but as you can see, cybersecurity and AI are becoming increasingly closer to each other, so probably you should do some prompt injection and see if they react badly, or jailbreaking or things like that. Detection of bad output compared to offensive language or nudity or profanity or things like that. You can either implement your own or using let's say open source tool, but again, I don't have time to discuss, but it's possible to do both ways with different costs depending on the situation. Obviously, check the accuracy metric again, not inside as you should do, but again you check because something can happen on that. And then also, of course, there are case-dependent checks. Case-dependent check you can do depending on your own industries. The other is certification. Governance require a body of law depending on the country. The good thing of certification are usually worldwide. ISO, International Standard Organization. I don't know which country are outside, but I'm fair to say that most people in the world are about 8 billion people. Under ISO, International Standard Organization, I would safely say there are 7 billion people covered by country that use ISO certification. Okay. IEEE instead is more American side, but definitely ISO is more global. Okay. Now, again, I don't have time how to draft the policy, but you should know there are new regulations just specific for AI. So if you want to be compliant in AI implementation, you can follow the new ISO policy 42001, for example. And the way you do that is usually you process, like, you do your policy, governance statement, and then you have register for checking, audit checking periodically, monthly, depending on the situation, you can do monthly or 6 months, whatever. And you have a register for incident. Okay. And you review the incident with a team. And that team then goes to the solution, and you record also the mitigation of the solution. I know it's very brief, that as much as I can say in a few minutes. And let's come back to the rule of thumb. Okay. If you are with me, still, you're not too confused or what I said, I give you a quick rule of thumb on trusting and reliability of an AI solution and the compliance depending on the legislation. A simple rule of thumb is the less explainable of the AI. Basically, if you're using OpenAI API, it's not explainable at all. The more governance you need. You cannot go inside of OpenAI, so you need more governance. Again, the wall around you, if you remember the picture, or you need to use very simple AI model. If you are technical, it can be logistic rejection, etc. You may lose a little bit in accuracy, but it's very stable and very understandable. So you reduce the cost of governance, depending on the situation. Okay. Obviously, the more regulated the industry, the more unexplainable the AI, the more you raise the governance budget. Okay, because somehow you need to be protected. The more you're exposed to, things that you cannot control outside API, OpenAI, Copilot, etc., and the more your industry regulated, regardless if it's the light touch, so-called vertical approach of yes or AI, the more you need to be regulated. It's a good practice to understand what's the worst possible arm of your AI application. If you understand what's the wrong case, again, washing machine is broken, you have a customer service. What's the worst possible arm? You don't solve the problem of the use. That's the worst possible arm. Okay, what's the business gonna do about that? What's the cost of it? You calculate what the cost is. Different is education. If you go wrong in an exam, you do a wrong or mistake in the grade on the treatment of the patient, what's the possible harm cost on that? You see, it's a very different cost base. Bear in mind that all the time. This is very technical depending on your understanding of governance. Basically, there are what is called data champions or AI governance champions, in which are people that they know a lot about, within the technical team, they know a lot about the regulation, and so therefore on a daily or weekly basis, they check if the team is respecting the regulation, the procedure they should, because not everyone in the team has that knowledge. Check always this cybersecurity exposure. Also remember, roughly speaking, 4 to 8% is the governance cost on top of the implementation cost, and usually 10 to 15% is the maintenance cost. And with that, if you have, we are on time. I need to finish in 5 minutes. Again, as you can see, I was very quick. I'm trying to give you some value to you, but this is a very reductive version of actually a 3-hour workshop that I'm gonna do on the 27th or 28th of July at 11 a.m. UK time. And I'm gonna talk in detail how you actually do what I just tried to say in few words today. You actually structure a solution that always have return on investment, the best prompt of setup, what question you should ask the developer. Again, the quality of the implementation of the survey will depend on the quality of question you're gonna do. I give you a detailed list of questions or how you can engage with it, rather than inside team on an outsourced team. And also how to choose that. When is best to have an outsourced team rather than have an internal team. I can answer in detail all these questions. And I give you an overview, an example. We drafted example already ready-made, how you can implement the register and the governance policy for your company. And with that, if you have any question, I have 2 minutes to answer, but I want to say that for the next 24 hours, if you're interested in the largest version and actually how to implement all of that, there is an offer the last 24 hours from now, in which you can have about 50% discount on the actual AI workshop, and with the price given that. If Akash can you put in the chat if you can, and also on a bonus on that, after taking the class, I give my availability to give a feedback on your specific implementation, basically review how actually you implement the AI solution and return on investment and all the governance of the AI together. I give me my availability to do specific feedback on your specific use case as a bonus to have taken the class.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrea. I think that was extremely, extremely insightful. So it was just going through in my mind in terms of when you're actually trying to, as a business leader or within an organization, when you're trying to deploy an AI model or build with AI, what are those various aspects that you really need to be conversant with? And starting with moving out of the right kind of questions, it seems to be there are a lot of moving pieces here which need to really come together to build a robust and a sustainable an AI model. So thank you so much for that. And I think your 3-hour workshop that's coming up, I think you mentioned 27th and 28th of July. I think I would definitely be looking forward to that. And I think that offer is really very attractive, 50% off. So that sounds great. And so folks, please go and sign in. And where do they need to go? I think they can even go to the aitechnologies.co.
Yeah.